Good morning, I'm Gretchen Hall. We're coming to you on this Tuesday, on the 18th day of November, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. The Iglesia ni Cristo has ended its protest in Luneta. But before that, Senator Amy Marcos made serious allegations against her brother, President Bongbong Marcos.
Batid ko na nagda-drug siya. Nalaman ko at ng pamilya. Nalaman ng pamilya. Seryoso ito.
A cabinet shakeup amid the flood control scandal. Two of President Marcos's top officials, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin and Budget Chief Amina Pangandaman, have stepped down out of delicadeza. And lawmakers in Congress are hitting back at the series of allegations made by former Ako Bicol Representative Zaldi Co against President Bongbong Marcos and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. They argue that Co's claims are vague, difficult to verify, and lack sufficient evidence. The Iglesia ni Cristo has concluded its rally at the Quirino Grandstand, but before it ended, the protest was marked by Senator Amy Marcos's public allegation that her brother, President Bongbong Marcos, is using illegal drugs. Here's the report.
The Iglesia ni Cristo ended their anti-corruption rally at the Quirino Grandstand on Monday night, 10. This was confirmed by INC spokesperson Edwil Zabala. The protest sought accountability from officials allegedly involved in corruption. During a surprise appearance, Senator Amy Marcos accused her brother, President Bongbong Marcos, and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos of using illegal drugs.
Nakakalaman kami ni Bongbong. Alam na ng buong pamilya ang problema sa kanya. Batid ko na nagda-drug siya. Ang laki ng pagkakamali ko. Mas lumala ang kanyang pagdulong. Magkatulong sa droga. Parehas pa na silang mag-asawa.
Senator Amy also urged her younger brother to stop and expressed concern for his health.
Bongbong, nag-aalala sa'yo si Manang. Tuwing nakikita kita sa TV, gusto kitang puntahan. Napakalaki ng pinagbago mo. Itsura, pagsasalita, takbo ng pag-isip. Minsan, napapatalong ako sa sarili ko. Ikaw pa ba yan? Si Bongbong ba talaga yung nakikita ko? Pero ako, aling ko, ako pa rin ito.
She further claimed that the presidential children have started to use drugs.
Pinasusuklaman ko pa ang pag-alok ng mag-inang si Sandro ng droga ang aking mga anak at iba pang mga kamag-anak. Yan ang hindi ko na mapapalampas.
Meanwhile, Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro dismissed the allegations as acts of desperation.
This is definitely a desperate move. Ang pinag-uusapan sa peaceful rally ay patungkol sa di umanong korupsyon. Ano ang dahilan ni Senator Amy para ang sarili niyang kapatid ay siraan niya?
Castro noted that the president underwent drug testing before his campaign in the 2022 elections, which yielded a negative result. She also questioned Senator Imy's motives, saying the remarks seemed intended to discredit both the President and the First Lady.
Anong klaseng kapatid si Senator Amy? Anong klaseng Pilipino si Senator Amy?
For his part, Davao City Representative Pulong Duterte renewed his call for all government officials to undergo drug testing. He emphasized that the resistance to drug testing only fuels suspicion.
On the second day of the United People's Initiative-led rally on EDSA, Duterte allies attorney Jimmy Bondoc and Representative Kiko Barzaga slammed the DILG's move to investigate rally participants for allegedly making seditious remarks and displaying seditious materials. Bondoc said such chants calling for the president's resignation do not constitute sedition. He argued that such statements are a form of free speech, not a crime, citing previous supposed unpunished calls for Vice President Sara Duterte to step down. Barzaga echoed this view, saying that Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla's stance is not supported by law.
Kahit sino pong first year student ang tanongin nyo kung inciting po ang BBM resign o kung sino man resign, sasabihin nila mali yan. Ang daming sumisigaw ng Sara resign Nahuli ba yan ng inciting to sedition? Kaya nga naghahanap tayo ng patas na gobyerno.
Hindi naman abogado si John Vic, so he is free to share his legal interpretations, but I don't believe he has sufficient experience in the legislative branch.
And there's another shakeup in government as two top cabinet officials have resigned amid allegations of flood control anomalies. Here's the report.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has accepted the resignations of Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin and Budget Chief Amina Pangandaman. Palace Press Officer Attorney Claire Castro confirmed both officials resigned out of delicadeza, saying they voluntarily stepped down to help address the investigation into flood control projects efficiently.
Both officials respectfully offered and tendered their resignations out of delicadeza after their departments were mentioned in allegations related to the flood control anomaly currently under investigation.
Bersamin was previously linked by former DPWH official Roberto Bernardo to alleged kickbacks involving flood control funds, while Pangandaman was accused by former Representative Zaldico of involvement in questionable budget insertions. The Marcos administration recently dismissed cause accusations, yet the palace said the resignations were necessary to allow for an unhampered investigation.
Hindi po natin masasabi na ang mga aligasyon ni Zaldico ay seryoso. Pero kung anuman ang kanyang mga nasabi ay maaaring ito ang nagbigay ng dahilan para sa dalawang mga magigiting nating mga secretaries na sila mismo ang voluntaryong mag-resign sa kanilang posisyon para mabigyan daan ang malalimang pag-iimbestiga sa mga maanomalyang flood control projects.
Finance Secretary Ralph Recto is now appointed as the new Executive Secretary, assuming the role informally known as the Little President.
Surprise, yeah, but work has to continue. Essentially, I think the role of the ES is just governance. So, taong bahay ka doon. Wala naman talaga legal president. You cannot do miracles.
Presidential Assistant for Investments and Economic Affairs Frederick Go will take over Recto's role in the Finance Department. Meanwhile, Rolando Toledo, a Budget Undersecretary, will serve as officer in charge of the Budget Department.
Actually, ninervyos ko yan. I was surprised actually. Nagulat ako. Nanginginig pa nga ako ngayon.
The palace also confirmed the resignation of Adrian Bersamin of the Presidential Legislative Liaison Office, a relative of the Executive Secretary, also linked to budget insertion allegations.
These leadership changes reinforce the President's commitment to strengthening institutions. The Office of the President assures the public that all agencies will continue to operate without interruption and with the same commitment to effective governance and public service.
And coming right up, we'll unpack the cabinet shakeup with former Budget Secretary Butch Saba. Don't go away. Morning Matters returns after a quick break. Keep it here. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Noon here in Morning Matters. We talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. As reported earlier, President Bongbong Marcos has accepted the resignations of Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin and Budget Chief Amina Pangandaman. This comes as the latest move in the ongoing cabinet shakeup, which began with the first phase of reshuffles in May of 2025. Now, since then, several cabinet members' resignations have been accepted, including secretaries from the Department of Foreign Affairs, Environment and Natural Resources, Energy, and Human Settlements and Urban Development, among others. Now, to help us unpack these changes, let's hear from Attorney Florencio Butch Abad, the former Budget Secretary of the Aquino administration. Welcome back to Morning Matters. Attorney?
Yes, hello. I'm here.
Nandiyan po kayo? Yes, there you go. Oo.
Yeah.
Okay, so a string of resignations took place right after the video statement of Zaldico, seeing the Budget Secretary and also E.S. Bersamin out the door. First off, what's your read over these movements, and was it the right decision? I think we can't see you via video though.
Oh, really? Can you?
Not
Oh.
yet.
Wait.
There you go. Oh, kita na po. Oo. Okay, magandang umaga po sa inyo ulit. Oo.
I think this is long overdue already. Especially in the case of Secretary Pangandaman. You know, Gretchen, this problem started in 2023. And if it had already been stopped at around that point, then it could not have gone through 2024 to 2025 and to what is now called by many observers as the worst blunder of the budget ever. So I think it's good that these resignations have started to come in so that the president can start anew, because the presence of people who are suspected to have been in collusion with those who committed graft in the flood control projects diminishes the political capital of the president and makes it difficult for him to govern effectively.
What do you mean this started in 2023? You mean you saw indicators already by then?
Yes, if you look at the BICAM committee conference committee report, you could already see there budget cuts to the tune of almost 400 billion and then diverted somewhere else. In fact, some members of Congress have been asking the Congress to produce the BICAM reports and the minutes of the BICAM committee meetings so that we could see where those cuts were made and where those cuts were inserted or allocated, so that people can see really what happened. But that has not been produced so far, so it's created even more suspicions that irregularities happen. So if that had been stopped at around that point, then it could have not gotten worse as it has happened already up to 2025.
Where did you see the budget cuts happening, and where did you see that diverted to? In the 2023 budget?
You could see that in the BICAM reports themselves. I saw some copies of the summaries of the BICAM report, and I saw a full copy of the BICAM report of 2025. And you can very well see there that there were huge budget cuts made, and that they were also moved or transferred to some other items like flood control, infrastructure project, Ayuda, and many other projects. So I think the ICI still has to get these documents so that they can be fully exposed and people are appraised of what really happened. Because otherwise, if we don't go to the root of this problem, then there is no way for us to be able to understand what really happened.
But the BICAM process is under the legislature. Why hold these two responsible, the ES and Budget Secretary, ano kayang maaaring naging say po nila dito sa budget diversions na ito?
Well, if you take the funding of the president's budget priorities away and a significant amount, what happens is you undermine the ability of the president to implement and execute his budget priorities for the coming year. You know, the budget is the financial expression of the president's development priorities for the coming year. Now, it is true that Congress has exclusive jurisdiction of the budget authorization process. But it is also true that an overwhelming number of the legislators are part of the president's what they call supermajority. They are parts of the president's coalition, and therefore they are also committed to supporting the president to enable him to provide clear directions for the country. But if they undermine that, I think the president has the right to call upon them to correct the budget misallocation so that his own priorities are not compromised. And that is part of his responsibility and function as a leader of, as a political leader and as a leader of the parties in coalition with him.
Which leads me to my next question regarding the statements of Zaldico. Do you think they are believable and traceable, ito pong mga insertions sa presidente? Because why would he botch his own budget, right? As yung NEP po is a reflection of his priorities. Does it make no sense na yung budget niya ang titirahin niya? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you know, it takes about 6 to 8 months to prepare what is called the National Expenditure Program, which is also known as the President's Budget. So, if the President had priorities that he wanted to include in the budget, then he had all those time to put those priorities and direct the Secretary of Budget and the Secretary of Finance and the economic managers to include those priorities in the NEP. So, that is why many people are a bit confused why Saldico is saying that in the BICAM, which is really, that was towards the end of December already, why would the President make a request to include 100 billion pesos in the BICAM? So I think if Saldico wants people to believe him, I think he has to come home and explain to us what all these revelations he is making and what were the sources, how does he support them so that they are believable, and if he's willing, to sign an affidavit, take an oath, so that they have what is called probative value, because otherwise, everything that he's saying, he has spoken thrice already on video, are mere hearsay and they cannot be taken seriously, even if we know that the allegations are serious and that somehow they relate to what is happening to this country. So, to help the whole process, to enlighten all of us, I think it's best for him to come home and then attend the ICI meeting or the committee hearings in the Senate, so that he can make these revelations and support them with the evidence that is in his possession.
So hindi po kayo naniniwala dun po sa mga revelations po niya dun sa video? Others would say na others would say na mas mahirap daw makita yung insertions kapag pinasok sa BICAM kesa sa NEP. Kaya naglagay daw ang Pangulo ng 100 billion worth of insertions dito.
Well, the context kasi is there's really budget irregularities that happen, and therefore, if you introduce an information like what Saldi did, of course, people will stop and say, "Totoo kaya yan?" So you will think about it. But if he is convinced that it's true and he wants to help sort out the truth, then, and for us to believe him, then he should come and say, face the appropriate bodies like the Senate and the ICI, so he could make this presentation and support them with evidence. And if there is evidence, then people can then make a judgment. Because otherwise, as I said, it's easy to say things on video without, being compelled to provide evidence. But people will then question, is it believable? And it remains that to be a question like that. It is not home to support these allegations.
You were a former budget secretary. I want to understand the accountability, culpability of the budget secretary in this whole process. Kasi ang alam ko lang ho ay nasa start and end ng budget secretary, nasa NEP at saka nasa approval ng tama po ba yung mga pag-disburse ng pera. Pero what is your idea of her involvement across this whole budget process? Can they stop disbursement? Kasi I know sila pong pumipirma no SARO, no, yung budgetary special allotment release order that is needed for funds that are under for later release at special purpose funds. At pati na rin ata yung mga insertions made by Congress. So, ano po ang powers ng isang budget secretary?
Well, una-una, of course, in the budget preparation stage, the secretary oversees the preparation of the budget. As I said earlier, that takes about 6 to 8 months. Then when the budget is finally approved by the President and the Cabinet, that is submitted to Congress and it becomes the General Appropriations Bill. But the function and the responsibility of the Secretary of Budget does not stop there. He has to monitor what happens to the budget as it goes through the budget authorization process. Because the responsibility of Congress is to find out whether the budget in fact reflects the priorities of the president. That is really principally what the legislature has to find out. And if there are amendments that departs from the budget's priorities, then it is the responsibility and function of the Secretary of Budget and Management to inform the president so that the president can call upon the speaker and his colleagues and party mates in Congress and say, what you're doing is already contrary to what I stated as my budget priorities as expressed in the General Appropriations Bill. And so he reminds them not to do that, otherwise he and the coalition that he leads will not be able to implement their budget priorities for the coming year. So it's important for the Secretary of the Budget to make sure that he follows through all the way until the budget is approved by Congress. Now, once the budget is approved by Congress and it is submitted to the President, then the executive, through the Secretary of Budget and Management and the economic managers, can still go over the budget as proposed by Congress and compare it with the national national expenditure program. Because if they see malayo yung General Appropriations Bill as proposed by Congress doon sa national executive program, then the President still has the power to veto those items that do not conform with his priorities. Now, what happens is, if some items or many items are vetoed, then the funds supporting those vetoed items go back to the Treasury. The following year, the President can submit a special appropriations to Congress so that what were taken out of the budget that were part of his priorities can then be funded by the special appropriations. So may remedyo pa rin yung executive pag nawala ng pondo yung kanyang priorities sa budget. So importante na tinututukan ng Secretary of Budget yan as it goes through Congress and all the way when it's submitted back to the President for signing as the General Appropriations Act. May remedyo siya all the way.
So in short, the Budget Secretary is as accountable for anything that slips through. Kung may dinagdag po dyan na questionable, kapag hindi po naisala ng DBM, they are responsible for that.
Yes, as budget
That they should
secretary,
have
because
seen it.
we cannot expect the president to do that himself because he has to attend to many things in government, and it's really the function of the Secretary of Budget to follow through on what was submitted to Congress, and if there is any deviation from what has been approved by the president, then he has to inform the president so that the president can then
Kapag sinabi
meet
ho niya
with the
na
speaker.
kapag sinabi ho niya na marami po, libo-libo po ang line items and we acted in good faith when we saw this kaya namin pinasa. Is that the negligent statement which is sinabi po ni Secretary Pangandaman?
I think it's more an excuse than a real reason because you know the DBM has staff, budget staff, people who look at this. Sanay na yan sa mga pag-uusisa ng budget. Sa DBM, there are bureaus. There
They
are
should have seen
directors
it.
in charge of every agency. So every director can monitor all those agencies. And then those line agencies also have budget experts. They also monitor whether, in fact, their budget priorities of their respective agencies are in fact intact. Kasi kung may malaking natanggal sa ahensya mo, siyempre, masisira naman ang programa ng ahensya mo.
Correct.
So you have to report that to your secretary. And if the secretary can do something about it, well and good. If the secretary is not able to do anything about it, then he can go up to the president. For example, in 2024, 242 billion of foreign assisted projects of the DOTR were taken away from the funding for those projects were taken away. Now, if they want to continue with those strategic transportation and infra projects, and Congress doesn't listen to them when they appeal that they should restore the budget, then the Secretary of Transportation can talk to the President and say, Mr. President, yung ating hong mga maraming high-impact transportation infrastructure projects, wala akong pondo dahil tinanggal ng Congress. Pwede bang kausapin niyo yung speaker? Para hindi naman mangyari yun dahil approved projects na yun with our bilateral and multilateral commitments. So may remedyo.
So that's how it works. So, okay, thank you for helping us understand more about the budget process. We hope to have you back on the show. I mean, this is a complex process that we need to understand from the inside. Your insights are very much valuable. Thank you for joining us this morning and for weighing in on the latest cabinet reshuffling. We have Attorney Florencio Butch Abad, the former Budget Secretary of the Aquino administration on Morning Matters today.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Now, next on the show, political pundit Richard Haydaria joins us to discuss the allegations by Senator Amy Marcos against her brother, the president. Don't go away. Morning Matters will return. Welcome back. You're also watching Morning Matters here in One News. As you all know, Senator Amy Marcos has leveled a serious accusation against her brother, President Bongbong Marcos, alleging he uses illegal drugs. Senator Amy made the claim at the INC rally last night, stating his name was on a 2016 drug list compiled during the Duterte administration. The senator then made a public plea for the president to stop using drugs, citing concerns for his personal health. The palace, through Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro, swiftly rebutted the claims. Meanwhile, she also dismissed the allegations as acts of desperation. Castro questioned Senator Amy's motives and noted that the president underwent drug testing before his campaign, saying the remarks seemed intended to discredit both the president and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos. Congressman Sandro Marcos has also issued a statement after his aunt, Senator Amy Marcos, accused President Bongbong Marcos and First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos of using illegal drugs. The Ilocos Norte representative said it pains him to see how low Senator Amy has gone, claiming she's using a web of lies aimed at destabilizing the government. He stressed that the allegations against his father and the First Lady is not only false, but also dangerously irresponsible. Congressman Sandro concluded with the quote, "Hindi ito asal ng isang tunay na kapatid." Let's talk more about this with geopolitical analyst Richard Heydarian. He joins us on the show to weigh in from across the world. Magandang umaga, magandang ano ba dyan? Umaga na rin. Okay, una-una, no, I guess what are your thoughts on the response of Representative Sandro Marcos? Hindi ito asal ng tunay na kapatid. Wow.
At medyo medyo bumaba daw. Ang baba daw ng mga ginagawa ni. No, I mean it's what almost 11 p.m. here. Matutulog na sana ako after a very very long day, and the next thing I know, ito na parang bardagulan na nangyari. We saw no less than the majority leader sa ating Kongreso, si Congressman Sandro, coming out with really, really tough statements. I think usually we used to wait for the First Lady to say something about this Marcos-Duterte feud before something dramatic happens. Remember, last year nung sinabi ni First Lady na patshot na siya sa ating Vice Presidente because of her supposed misreaction to the Duterte family making fun of her husband and the commander-in-chief. Now it looks like Sandro is taking up the cudgels for his family in many ways by making clear na they have been tolerating the Senator Amy Marcos, who has been really criticizing and throwing shades at the president for quite some time. But I think what we saw yesterday is going for the jugular na si Senator Amy Marcos. It's not clear what her intention here is. Is she trying to burn the bridges, but at the same time build a bridge with a potential new constituency, which is the basically Duterte camp? There's some pre-election surveys, I know it's quite early, but some pre-election surveys suggested that actually an Amy Marcos and a Sara Duterte team up could be very strong, basically bringing solid North and solid South together. But with the response from Majority Leader Sandro, I think it's very clear that the Marcos family will not be unified if ever Amy Marcos decides to run for a higher office. And let's not forget, she barely got into the Senate. She really got in by by the skin of her teeth. And I look at the numbers. I'm from the I'm Ilocano again. I mean, this might get misquoted. From my understanding of things on the ground, Amy Marcos did benefit from the support of the loyalist Ilocano pro-Marcos constituencies. So now I'm not sure what Senator Amy Marcos is really up to, because this response by Congressman Sanders shows that the First family has had enough of this. So it's quite possible that certain bridges have been burned, and that from now on perhaps the tolerance will not be there, and the battle lines have been drawn. Whether this is going to be effective for Amy Marcos or whether it is going to be destabilizing for the administration, I think we can argue about that. But the least I can say, as someone who's trying desperately to get back to the Philippines with not so expensive tickets, is that I'm not sure Amy Marcos is helping her career here. I'm not sure she's helping her constituency back in the Ilocos region where the Marcoses are strong. But I think she's not helping the country. I think these kinds of attacks on the commander-in-chief, questioning him based on very questionable claims, this is just going to feed into the climate of uncertainty, which is already affecting our economy very, very bad.
But she made serious allegations also there, claiming that her brother's decision-making has been influenced by the use of illegal drugs, not just the president, also the first lady, also the presidential son. Do you think that matters? Why this specific revelation dropped by the sister? Ang dami naman din pwede, di ba? Pero itong mismong paggamit ng illegal na droga, was this meant to fan the flames of the public's anger, to hopefully turn this 3-day protest into something more? Anong basa mo?
Well, again, obvious na maraming frustration dyan. No? So, sa pagkaalam ko, hindi sang-ayon ng mga iba't ibang grupo on the way forward. Mukhang yung pro-Duterte camp, and some would argue Amy Marcos is already firmly in that camp. Baka ang gusto nila, actually hindi siya baka, I think it's quite clear, ang gusto nila dito is mag-resign ng presidente, so basically change in government if not change in the regime. Pero sa pagkaalam natin, that 3-day rally by the INC, it looks like the INC leadership is very clear that they're not calling for a change in the administration. What they're calling for is for some significant reforms to address concerns with accountability and corruption. And that's why the timing of this latest cabinet reshuffle, I think, is perhaps not a coincidence. We knew that Executive Secretary Bersamin, ex-Executive Secretary Bersamin, was potentially part of a reshuffle for quite some time, but to have even the budget secretary part of this, and to have it exactly a day after the massive show of force by the best organized religious organization in the country, arguably, right, outside the Catholic Church. I think the timing tells that perhaps maybe the president and the INC leadership, perhaps they have an understanding on the way forward, and that the INC is not interested in pushing for political destabilization or pushing for the change to administration, which leaves the pro-Duterte camp, which arguably includes the Amy Marcos, in a bind. So I think you were absolutely right by suggesting that perhaps this is an act of desperation, because she's really burning bridges with the ruling faction within the Marcos dynasty, if I can put it that way. And I'm not sure how is this going to help her political career in the coming years. President Marcos could become a lame duck president in a year or two, or maybe earlier, but he's still the commander-in-chief. And still, a significant chunk of the country, including the Iglesia Ni Cristo leadership, are not calling for the resignation of the president, but rather want a constructive way whereby there is significant reform on the corruption and accountability issues.
Tingin mo ba tanggap na ng Duterte side or faction si Senator Amy Marcos? I mean, dati na pag-uusapan lang natin dito na namamangka siya sa dalawang ilog. Now she's clearly defining her political lines, aligning herself with the Duterte camp. Possibly, I mean, it could help her survive, right? Through the next administration. Has she been already accepted by the Duterte side for her?
I mean, nakita naman natin na maraming nag-react, no? Nung in-endorse ni Vice President Sara Duterte sa Amy Marcos nung election time. You could argue that perhaps that was decisive, or perhaps help Amy Marcos to get across the line, to win by the skin of her teeth. But nevertheless, I'm sure that there are also people in the Duterte camp, maybe supportive of a Sara for 2028, but not necessarily supportive of a Duterte running with another Marcos. At least what's clear is that para kay Amy Marcos, perhaps she wants to win over that pro-Duterte camp, and basically saying that I'm not BBM. And BBM, basically ang sinasabi na dito is BBM is not representative of the Marcos brand. And so even though Marcos siya, she could be a viable, and she could be an effective and loyal and reliable partner for Sara Duterte if ever they run. As I said, some pre-election surveys said that an Amy-Sara matchup could be theoretically very, very strong, right? So I think definitely there's that kind of messaging. So this messaging could alienate some in the loyalist space. Clearly it's not winning over the non-partisan Filipinos. But I think this is an conscious attempt by her to win over folks in the pro-Duterte camp who are not convinced that they should support yet another Marcos come 2028.
But do you think she's somehow convinced the Dutertes by going against her own family? I mean, she spoke of very personal experiences inside, no? Essentially going against most of her own. How do you think this comes across to Filipinos, mostly? To whose favor do you think this revelation will work?
Well, sensitive issue ang family issue, no? Kaya actually, generally, I've been trying not to talk too much about this whole sibling rivalry issue, which is, I think everyone has known about this as far as all you have to do is just read about the history of the Marcoses. It's a very sensitive issue. It's a sensitive issue for the family, sensitive issues for Ilocanos who support the Marcoses. Of course, they don't want to split in the family. But let's be honest, I think Senator Amy Marcos intervention, very feisty intervention, and the response we saw from Majority Leader Sandro Marcos says that indeed perhaps we're moving towards that perhaps official splitting na within the House of Marcos, and clearly that will send reverberations across our political system and complicate further alignments and realignments ahead of 2020 elections. As I said, this is a big gamble by Amy. Perhaps this move will endear her to majority of the DDS or pro-Duterte supporters, but it could come at the expense of significant number of people from so-called solid North or from supporters of the House of Marcos who could see this as a form of betrayal. So it's a very, very risky move from her, and the fact that she barely got into the Senate in the last election shows that perhaps her margin of error is not that big, or at the very least, this is a very, very big gamble on her part.
Okay, right after that speech by Senator Amy Marcos, the INC cut short na its supposedly 3-day protest. What do you think happened there? Do you echo Ronald's observation na nagbago ng posisyon itong INC starting on the first day? Probably baka meron na negotiation somewhere there, quid pro quo. Did you notice the same thing? And where do you think does the INC stand on this? Because right after that speech, she was shown being congratulated by the Iglesia, including Senator Rodante Marcoleta. So parang anong basa mo dito sa INC as a body and their role in supposed or an emerging or a possible withdrawal of support by the military, rumored?
Gretchen, I'm all the way here in University of Oxford, so I'm doing research and econ and maths and all of that. Pero base sa pagkalam natin, I think Secretary Ron Llamas has been open about it, I think we're sure that there are communication channels. Clearly, the Malacanang and the INC leadership have healthy and robust communication channels. And sa pagkabasa natin dun sa statements ng leadership of the INC, it seems that at least so far, they're not for resignation or change of government, and they're willing to give the president more time and more space to do what is right, what is necessary, and to reassure them pagdating sa mga kanilang demands on issues of corruption and accountability. So I think that creates some breathing room, some cushion, and definitely that takes away the wind from the pro-Duterte camp who were hoping to have some sort of a denouement or a decisive moment in November. So perhaps the president has bought himself at least a month or two, or if not more. But again, this is going to be a very, very fragile situation, and much will depend not only on communication channels between the Malacanang and the leadership of one of the most organized, best organized religious groups in the country, but much will also depend on yung public perceptions, anong gagawin ng ICI, and ano ba, siguro may mga cabinet reshuffles na parating, diba? Or new appointments or reappointments which could reassure the INC. I think what is absolutely clear at this point is that the INC is a very well-organized religious organization. And kitang-kita natin, they were able to mobilize more than 500,000 people. And I think that's a huge thing. And that's a show of force. And I think INC definitely is a major, major factor in Philippine society.
Okay, maraming salamat. Ginulo ka namin dyan, no? Dahil sa mga pangyayari
Magtulog
kagabi.
na
Certainly
baka may
need
makita
to
naman
hear
ako.
your voice
Thank you so
all the
much.
way there from the University of Oxford. Maraming salamat. We'll get the side of somebody from the other side of the political spectrum, Manutikiya, pero hindi ko kayo pinagsabay para walang bardagulan na mangyayari.
Ang balance, I'm in the middle.
Thank you for joining us here on Morning Matters today, Richard Darian. Now, let's talk to political strategist Malu Tikia. She is joining us today, this morning, to react to the statements of Senator Amy Marcos. So, magandang umaga sa iyo, Malu. Thank you for joining us.
Magandang umaga, Gretchen. Magandang umaga sa iyong mga nakikinig at nanonood. Good morning.
Okay, una-una ho, your take on the revelations, the bombshell dropped by Senator Amy Marcos. Matagal na pinag-uusapan ito, but coming now from the sister. First, why during this INC rally, and what do you think was the goal?
Well, clearly, Senator Amy showed that it is very important to help prevent any eventualities in whatever is happening. Second, he showed that country is more important than probably the what is happening within the Marcos family. But it is clear that there was endearment in what she said about you're adding, and that she will be there for him. There was no mention of resignation. It was just a talk about umuwi na tayo, magpahinga na tayo. So, if you look at the whole speech of the senator, it really was conscious about the Filipino culture of family. But it was a pained act, as you saw her in her delivery, and after that, she was shaking. She was, as she said, I was unburdened, but, mahal ko kapatid ko. So, I guess the agony there's so many things going on social media, that, how come she never talked about it, that she knows about it when she negotiated with the unit team for 2022. But, these are all hindsights, but right now what we have is a sister, the eldest, she actually contextualized it as dati, ang tatay ko nandito, ang tatay natin nandito para alagaan tayo, ngayon ako yung panganay. So there's so many things that she mentioned, taking into careful consideration about family. Because she is addressing a bigger audience, which is not only the INC, but those outside. And really, all of us were shocked. I was with another leader during the meeting, and we watched her on TV, and all of us were like, wow. That was the initial reaction, and when we were able to get over the speech, it was like there was total silence in the room. And I respect her. It's a very courageous act. But let's see. Probably she wanted to stop whatever is being planned by both sides. And her reaction actually resulted to INC, canceling the third day. But I do understand that the EDSA rally will continue, but that's entirely a different,
Pero hindi ba, Malu, kapag when you correct a loved one, hindi ba it also matters not just the content of your correction, but also the manner and form and timing and the way you speak it. Some would say na kung talagang mahal ni Senator Amy ang kanyang kapatid, sana ginawa na lang niya ito in private, no? Why decide to say to give those revelations in a protest rally na nababahiran ng all sorts of speculation that could possibly lead to a withdrawal of support na matagal na din pinag-uusapan. I mean, it begs the question, was there a different objective to this other than being loving of your brother?
Well, one Gretchen, she has been out of touch with the president for 3 years. She has not been given a space in that inner circle. She is not part of the kitchen cabinet of the president. And the plan was in 2022 that she will be very active as a member of the kitchen cabinet. So how do you reach out to your brother if you haven't seen each other for 3 years? And
Why now? Because our economy is on a free fall, and leaders need to take certain sacrifices to put the house in order. Mahalaga yon kasi ang naaapektuhan na taong bayan eh. Ordinaryong tao naaapektuhan. Kung titingnan nyo, malapit ang Pasko pero wala kang nararamdaman na Christmas rush. Ang mga tao nag-iisip, gagastos ba ako ngayon o itatago ko ang pera ko para sa susunod na quarter. So, yung timing, napakahirap mong i-judge, pero kinailangan niya to rise into the occasion to do this. Mind you, she has always been there for the brother. When he was governor, it was citizen, or I think congresswoman siya, who actually was like a sweeper. If you look at the career of the president, I mean, Marcos is always there, trying to sweep things. When he became governor, ang nag-take over siya. At inayos niya yung naiwanan. When he became congressman, si Senator Amy ang naging congresswoman. And para siyang talagang tagalinis ng naiwan ng kapatid. Masakit yon, pero sinabi rin niya, alam sa probinsya. So, hindi na siya nagtatago sa mga kaalaman ng tao. Kasi the more na itatago mo, the more na kinukonsinti mo. And that narrative echoes to families with children or relatives who are in the same situation. Either you cover it, or you help them out in the hope that they will be able to stand up on their own after rehabilitation. And I guess it's also crucial to look at not the 2028. Certainly, Senator Marcos wasn't focused on the 2028, because if she was, this should have stopped. She should not go to the stage if she was thinking of 2028. Wala sa usapan ngayon ang 2028. Ang nasa usapan ay anong gagawin natin sa nahuhuling 3 taon. Tayo ba ay ganito lamang na just floating, or are we going to seize the opportunity and rebuild? Naiiwan na tayo. Vietnam and Cambodia are up there, and the Philippines is down, and we're chairing the ASEAN next year.
Pero, Malu, if you take a look at the whole situation, how does this exact revelation about the president's use of illegal drugs solve the economic freefall of the country? Sabi nga ni Claire Castro, na nakausap niyo nung isang araw, ang reaction niya dito, do not destroy your brother. This is not the issue now. Since you cannot find a corruption issue involving the president, you are diverting the issue. What a shame, Senator Amy, what a shame.
Again, sa BFF ko, hindi yan diversion. Isang pained realization na kailangan kong sabihin, kailangan kong tulungan ang bansa, at kung ito yung paraan niya ng pagtulong, gagawin niya. So, clearly, she has crossed her Rubicon. That has been there for when they were kids. And when she became senator, in fact, even in the 2025 election, ang usapan na, magsalita ka na, sabihin mo na. Pero until that very last moment, she held on, hoping na maaayos yung pamilya. Yung ibang komentaryo kasi, why are you washing, dirty linens in the public? But there comes a point in time where the talk has to stop. The whispers need to be attended to, because it is important for her that the health of the brother is taken care of, and the health of the nation. So that is a very hard act to follow, and maraming nagsabi sa kanya, nag-advise sa kanya, but at the end she made that decision, and whether she'll be crucified or praised or what, she has done a nation a great service.
Well, right after that, the INC wrapped up its supposedly 3-day protest. What do you think happened there? And do you think this effectively also extinguishes rumors of an impending coup or a withdrawal of support?
I think the decision of INC to cut short their 3-day rally is recognition of what Senator Amy did. As you very well know, that rally isn't about resignation. That rally wasn't about establishing a junta, etc., etc. It's essentially for transparency and accountability. And if you look at the speeches, they were calling for opening the process, making accountable, getting these people cases filed in court. So when they decided to stop, I guess it's the fact that if they continued, it would lead towards a call for resignation, and that rally wasn't really for that. Right now, what is being played are 3 scenarios. There's a call for resignation. There's people are studying the incapacity clause of the Constitution, Article 7, Section 11, in case of incapacity. In case of resignation, you have the constitutionally successor to take over. In case of incapacity, the vice president becomes acting president. And the third, I think, is an action of the administration. There's talk that the ombudsman is going to file cases to so many names, both incumbent politicians and everything. When Yusek Claire Castro said that it was a diversion, it was not. It was essentially saving the brother and saving the republic.
Oh, yung incapacity clause, how does that work? I mean, there's a voluntary and involuntary declaration. The vice president
by the cabinet, and then it has to go to Congress. And then there's got to be a declaration of incapacity, and the vice president takes over as acting.
If two-thirds,
as acting.
If 2/3 from the House and the Senate vote on the incapacity of the president.
Yes.
Okay. It's curious provision of the
so
Constitution. We'll look into that.
Scenarios. There are scenarios being played. Last night, this dawn, this morning. So the legal eagles would be able to probably tell you the differences of those options. But the other problem really is the administration has to be forthright with the accusations being made by Congressman Ko. Waiving it as hindi yan totoo is not answering. You have to be direct, because very direct. Whether that has probative value is something else. Diba? So these things need to be answered publicly if you are to arrest the continuous decline of trust of the president. Just waiving what Yusek Claire Castro often does, is a wrong way of addressing the issues.
And that is from Malu Tikia on this morning of November 18. Shout out to your BFF. Maraming salamat for joining us and answering our call. We have political strategist Malu Tikia weighing in on the statements of the president's sister last night at the Quirino Grandstand. Maraming salamat. We'll look into those insights throughout the rest of the day and keep this discussion going. In the meantime, that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.